And so I think for us, that organizing the community track for the conference was like a shot of confidence. I remember all of us saying, because we were starting to get really down in our job searches, like, we can still do this. We're good at this. And at some point, somebody will realize that.
Layoffs, ghost jobs, AI. These are unprecedented times. Trying to find a job in the professional world, especially the tech sector, has never been harder. It seems the social contracts around job seeking have been all but torn up in pursuit of profits.
At the same time, there are plenty of folks out there finding new careers every day, whether through strong networking, creative approaches to job applications, or just sheer determination. There are those who have gone through the long, difficult job hunt and found success on the other end.
I'm Jason C. McDonald.
And I'm Michael Tharrington. This is On the Board, where we interview everyday people who've successfully landed jobs during the discouraging employment landscape of the last 2 years.
No out-of-touch influencers and dubious pay-to-win schemes here, just real experiences and practical insights. Welcome to On the Board. Today we have with us Monica Ayhens-Madon from Mozilla. You are the community manager for Thunderbird, right?
I am the community and marketing coordinator for Thunderbird. So it means I kind of live both in the marketing and comms team and the community team. So
You're glue, basically.
kind of the glue, yes. So I do a lot of like our monthly office hours where we get to talk to members of our community. I do a lot of our socials. So if you've ever been on Mastodon and interacted with Thunderbird in the past 6 or so months, chances are you've probably interacted with me. So yeah, and I have been doing that. I started as a contractor about a year ago, and I have been on as staff since April.
That's awesome. Congratulations. So when you first found yourself back on the job market in 2023, what
2022.
2022, yeah. So what when you found yourself in this situation, what did you see? What was that like?
Well, when I left in it was late August of 22. And at that time, I had actually been interviewing. I was a finalist for the Fedora community coordinator job. I made it to that last stage. I had interviews with a couple other places. And so I had kind of what I thought seemed like pretty good prospects. Um, and then and then they went with other candidates, or I only made it to the first or second round. And then I mean, there's always that kind of end of year slump in late November, December, where just places are getting ready to shut down. But when I started picking back the job search back up again in January, I noticed that I was sending out a lot of things and just not getting anything back. And so it was by I would say by May or June of the next year, um, it was starting to get pretty dire. I was like, well, that open source career was kind of fun for a spell, but I was like, I can go back and be academic support staff, which kind of sucks because the pay is awful. The conditions are they can be nice, but it's hard to get full time. It's hard to get benefits. Things were stressful because my husband had been laid off right before I left, and he'd gotten it back. But it was just so there was always like this kind of sword hanging over our head, like I really need to get a job because we want to be sure that his company doesn't do layoffs again. So when I started, it was pretty positive, but then as it went further on, it was just it got dire pretty pretty quickly in.
So when you're in that situation of like pushing, you're optimistic at first and you're going really hard looking for a position. You've been going for months and you start to feel dire and you start to feel like you need to take something on. Did you start to broaden your search from the tech world?
I
Or,
I did, and by the time I got the contract position here, I also had an interview to run the basically the college writing kind of tutoring center at Savannah College of Arts and Design here in Atlanta. So I kind of leaned in with that experience because I had a lot of experience as an instructor, working as a writing tutor. I'd kept up and I was still kind of doing kind of freelance tutoring in this time to kind of help supplement my lack of income. And so I kind of did fall back and ended up in that actually would not have been a bad role to be in. SCAD is if I don't know how familiar you, yeah, it's a great school. It's a really great creative fun school. I think if I would have gotten that job and taken it, I would have had a blast. But I did start to kind of go more into non-tech roles by the end, definitely.
I totally relate to that, and I relate to just what you said about kind of picking up contract jobs in between. For instance, I picked up some just pet sitting jobs while I've been unemployed, and that keeps a little bit of money in my pocket, and it's a good thing to have. It just kind of keeps you positive as well. Gives you something to do. It's
Hmm.
Yeah, I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to wonder then, how does one start finding these contract jobs? Because I know for me, I haven't really known exactly where to start. And a lot of people, the first thing they think of is Upwork. And that
Ugh.
is almost as bad as searching for a
Oh
job the normal
God.
way.
Yeah, except you have to pay for it. I did start filling things out on Upwork, but honestly, that just looked so incredibly daunting. I never really got past the first stage. The contract stuff that I had was contacts that I previously had. I signed up for, I can't remember what the name of the service was, but it's kind of a freelance tutoring site that you kind of put your name out there, you put your information out there, and then potential students can contact you, and then the site got a small cut of that. So some of the things I picked up from there. There's also a tutoring site called Varsity Tutors, but that's also was like not fantastic pay, but you could kind of pick up what you wanted. The best thing I had was contacts that I'd previously known. Like there was a student who I helped with his doctoral dissertation. And so I kept on working with him even after he graduated. And that was nice because it was really interesting work. The student I work with, he's trilingual in Korean first, then Russian, then English. And so I've actually worked my way into this niche of Korean language scholars of Soviet history doing their dissertations here in the States. So, and he's introduced me to others. So it's kind of like how I ended up in this position. Finally, it's building the networks up and basically asking him, do you have any friends who are, going through their PhD programs and could use similar help? So, and I actually just recently finished helping someone at the University of Oregon with their dissertation. Yeah. So networks. And it's funny because I went to college and I didn't network at all. I had no idea you had to network. It's like, I'm just here to learn stuff. And it's like, oh, I can't find a job with my degree in ancient Greek because I didn't know like internships and, also I wasn't in the Greek system, so I didn't have like those built in networks to fall back on. But this time I had networks that I could make, and then networks I'd ended I ended up making since I got involved with open source in 2018. And those ended up being the things that helped me get the job here.
Yeah, can you when I think about networking, I think about LinkedIn a lot of the time because that's just like a software tool that we use to kind of like show our networking, but obviously it goes a lot deeper than that. It goes into the relationships that you build. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, how your work as a community manager has allowed you to sort of naturally network with folks, because that like I've felt that.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things I think some of the coolest community stuff I think I did was when I was out of work. Um, One of the things I got to do at Scale, Linux conference in Pasadena every year, great thing. Well, after I left my previous job, I ended up being on their community council for governance. So I got to go to Scale that next year, and I decided one of someone I met in the open source community used to also work at the same company I did, and he was a contractor for Jet Propulsion Labs, which is also in Pasadena. And I'm like, we should get a bunch of Linux nerds together and take a tour at JPL, and maybe we could talk to some of the people who are doing cool open source stuff and have them talk to us. And this should have been like, this is a ludicrous idea. And I'm like, I have time. Why not? And so I reach out to him actually through a little community we have of people who used to work at our company. And I'm like, hey, do you have anyone we can talk to about possibly getting, if we sign up for a tour, that maybe somebody who could come chat to us. And he's like, oh, don't worry about signing up through the public tours. We can get you a private tour. And we did. And it was flipping awesome. And so it was great because it was Ubuntu people, it was Fedora people, it was OpenSUSE, it was a lot of OpenSUSE people. They show out to Scale, and it's fantastic. And it's all of us who are normally stuck at the booth and not kind of getting to do as much of the stuff. And it was, and I think I met them the year before when I worked Scale. And as my husband says, I am a human golden retriever. Every stranger is just a best friend I haven't made yet. And so I'm just out there chatting with people, getting their stories, telling my stories, and remembering those connections. So when I started kind of doing this, I reached out to the Open USA people because I was still on their Facebook group. And I'm like, hey, if I can get us into Jet Propulsion Labs, a bunch of you want to come? And they did. And another thing, and I think this was something that I did right before I got the position, was that, which the Software Freedom Conservancy decided to bring their conference FOSSI back. And so I'm like, we need to have an awesome community track for this. And so I put a call out on Mastodon, and Josh Simmons, who's now the head of the Matrix Foundation, and Julia Airoli, who I think is at AWS now, and Stephen Kellett from the Ubuntu community are all like, yes, let's make this happen. We put in a pitch for our track, and we got it. Well, all of us were pretty much at that point out of work. So we had been hit by layoffs, or we had left and encountered this horrible job market. And one of the things that we decided to do with our track was like, there's going to be a lot of people in situations like ours. And so we decided, we talked with Marie Dordan, who's another awesome person who had been hit by Red Hat layoffs. We're like, can you make us some stickers for like, I'm hiring, or hire me?
Right.
And we put those out, so that kind of networking could naturally happen. But I think we all kind of needed that, because, and a lot of, I think, the network happened at conferences or just kind of in these little interactions. And I think it's kind of the casual networking that's kind of just happens when you're not trying to force it. That is the strongest. And so I think for us, that organizing the community track for the conference was like a shot of confidence. I remember all of us saying, because we were starting to get really down in our job searches, like, we can still do this. We're good at this. And at some point, somebody will realize that. And it was really helpful. So really, it's the people that talk, just talk to people, talk to everybody. And most of the friendships were like kind of these little kind of um, just, I don't want to say kind of casual friendships, but they weren't just like, oh, we're only going to connect over open source stuff. Like, oh, we're going to connect over open source stuff and getting together to play video games online. And those have been some of like kind of the most powerful ones. And that was one of the ones that helped me get here.
Yeah, I can say that I found every job I've ever found, kind of to your point, every job I've ever found has been through networking.
Mm-hmm.
One was through my Python user group. One was through a friend referring me to another friend. Another one, well, one was just I was found on LinkedIn by a recruiter. Another one was through
Yeah.
a video game, of all
Yeah.
places, video game group that I was a part of. And then
Nice.
even now I'm using, I had a conversation with someone who's gonna, spread my name around. He's part of my Bible study. There's
Yeah.
there's kind of a networking group for community managers that I go to, and that turned into something. And it's like it's amazing how far these connections will go.
Mm-hmm.
When I first actually one of those jobs was actually person I talked to another person who talked to another person who introduced me to somebody who introduced me to
Mm-hmm.
a different person who referred me into his company.
Yep.
It goes deep. It's
Yep.
weird.
Yeah, because it's like you never know who that person in your network, what networks they can tap into. And especially if you have those personal connections where we're all kind of vouching for each other. It's like and so by the time that third person is like, well, I might not know them directly, but this person who I really trust knows this person who they really trust. And so we can kind of, it's that way of getting, especially with just the hurdles in the application process now.
With
Yeah.
human blockchaining.
I
Hmm.
speaking of this networking and you were talking about, finding community amongst these community managers and building out this track and how a bunch of y'all at the time were unemployed. I'm unemployed right now. Well, I've just gotten a part-time job. Woo. But
Yay.
in
Woo.
the meantime, I've definitely felt a lot of community amongst other unemployed folks, building each other up. I've met folks through being unemployed and joining communities with other community managers. There's something called Community Club. It's a big
Mhm.
community managers, and it's been really encouraging to just to kind of band together and to have that's like we all have this going on. We all want to help each other out. We're kind of liking each other's posts. We're getting together,
Yeah.
cheering each other on, and it's really been very helpful. So
Yeah.
that's it.
And I think especially with that whole kind of like the crisis of confidence that you get where you're just like, oh, was that last job just a fluke? Is like was that it? Is it just that I'm not good at this? And having people was like, no, you've got the skills, you've got the talent, you've got the personality. You just need that opportunity now.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
imposter syndrome wasn't like already bad enough when you have the job, then when you
Oh, no
don't,
kidding.
it kicks in. I feel that for sure. So
Yeah.
So that leads me to another question. Then we get into the classic. Now it's time to prepare the resume to apply for
Mm,
jobs. And how do you overcome the imposter syndrome and do that thing that everyone tells you where you got to sell yourself and you got to talk about how you're just the most awesome person ever and you can walk on water and you know you have to write this convincing resume. How do you do that when you don't even believe it yourself?
Yeah, I was really thankful when I was doing that, that my husband is extremely good at helping to give me a bit of confidence and to look over my resume. And because I am not good at doing that, and I think that good community managers do this. We want to boost everyone else up. And that so sometimes we aren't very good at boosting ourselves up. And so he was kind of, encouraging me to like, it's like, oh, he's like, oh, remember the time you did this or you accomplished this? And it's like, oh, yeah, I did do that. And so, especially, Michael, if you have a community that, kind of knows you and knows your work, I would say kind of, if you can get them to kind of like go over your resume, kind of, I think almost as like a cheerleader would, and be like, hey, it's like you're not giving yourself nearly enough credit for these things. So to have like those voices that can have that sense of positivity and sense of trust in you, especially if like you're months, if not like a year into the job search and just going like, what's the point?
I think that's a very good bit of advice because actually after I left my most recent community that I was managing, Dep.2, I went back after a month and I just sort of said a farewell, wrapped it up and kind of wished everyone well and said I'd be in and out and like to keep in touch with folks and the pour in from folks that just gave so much so much love to me was like definitely built me up and made me feel good and
Yeah.
I have had people kind of return to me on LinkedIn and see how I'm doing and that's kept the engine sort of going, so it definitely helps. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So when you're working on that resume, what is there anything that you found you needed to remove too?
Oh, that's mm, I was like when I was going through mine, there wasn't it was kind of some of a bit of that older job stuff because oh, actually, well, what I did is I ended up going hyper focused, and I had about four different resumes that I sent out. So depending on the job, like if it was a community manager job, I had that. If it was kind of an academic support job, I had that. If it was more of a marketing job, and so I probably had about five different specialized resumes. And if there was a job I really wanted, I would take one of those, and if I needed to tweak it a bit. So that kind of helped me with the what to leave in and what to leave out. Because obviously, like for the SCAD job, they would want to know my academic background and the instruction. Whereas an open source community manager or marketing job might not care about that as much. So that helped me a lot.
Did you take a similarly like tailored approach to writing cover letters as well?
Hmm. Yep. Basically, I had kind of like specific kind of cover letter kind of it'll blocks, and I would just use those as like, okay, these are the community management blocks, these are the marketing blocks. And then that made, because I still hate writing cover letters. They're awful. They're just it's like and there's just so much pressure because it's like I need you to read this and realize I'm an awesome person, but you're reading like 5,000 of these. So
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, I've even heard some reports that many recruiters don't even read them at all, which adds kind of insulting because we write them and then they don't even read them.
Yeah.
Was there any adjustments you found that like improved your application to interview ratio?
Honestly, the thing that did it was the two open source jobs that I was interviewing for when I took the contractor position with the Underbird was with the Python Software Foundation,
Really?
and then the Underbird position, and both of those were through personal contacts because I had heard about the Python Software Foundation job opening up through Deb. So I knew that that was going to be open. And so it's like, and Deb and I had met at quite a few conferences. She was my tea buddy for virtual tea goal that I organized in 2020. She sent me a really good box of spiced tea. It's so nice.
Deb's
And
awesome.
Deb's so great. I mean, oh my gosh, yeah, the whole yeah, the Python world is just they're amazing people. Oh my gosh. So I had those personal contacts with them. And then the Thunderbird job, Joe Resington from Late Night Linux, who had, been in that situation, out of work, wondering, well, was that it for my open source career? Was like, hey, I want to put you, it's like, why don't you reach out to Jason Evangelo? He's at the Thunderbird. He's like, if you're open to doing some part-time contract work, I think they're hiring. And I emailed Jason, and that started it. So talked with him, sent my resume, had a video interview with him and Ryan, and then October 1st last year was when I started my first of two 3-month contracts. And then in April, that was when I got that was when I got invited on to come on as staff. So that really was the key thing, was I think those positions that were directly from those networks and from people that I had been talking to for, at that point, 3-4 years. So, and I think what was nice with the Thunderbird one is that it let them kind of see what I could do. And then, they could use that to be like, okay, it's like you've been doing good contract work. I guess we want to have you on full time now.
Moral of the story, even if you're wanting full-time work, don't shy away from contract, basically.
Yes, don't shy away from exactly.
Someone who
Exactly.
just picked up part-time contract work with a place. This bodes well, so I'm happy to hear this, y'all. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and if not there, then again that network of, it's like, well, maybe like we don't have anything, full time now, but hey, there's this place. And so, yeah, and so definitely part time contract work. If you're just like, okay, chance to show off my skills, get some new things to kind of, to kind of exclaim that I've done and I can do for your community. Um, yeah, it's definitely because I think that I hadn't done that kind of contract work previously, so part of me was a bit nervous, but it turned out well, and so I hope your part-time contract work turns out well too.
Thank you. This is all resonating really deeply with me right now. So I'm
Yeah,
in week 2, so this is great.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm feeling good too. And like you said, it gives you a chance to develop new skills and
Hmm.
go down a new avenue and put new things on your resume and continue to show potential employers like, hey, I'm chugging along, I'm doing new stuff. So
Yeah.
and like you said, deeper networks as well. I'm meeting new folks through it, and it's really cool. So I absolutely relate to that. Um, Well, I'm wondering, during your how long was your process that you were job searching, if you don't mind me asking?
Oof, it was just over a year because I left middle end of August 22, and then I didn't start this job until October 1st, 23. It was over a year.
You got it in like one of the roughest times too. There was layoffs just across the board right then, so that was a really tough one.
And it was hard because so many community people just were, I mean, like they were gutting like community management positions and
Right.
OSPOs. And so all the places we would have applied to had just laid off all of their staff. And yeah, but but seeing like a lot of us there at Fosse, and we had a talk about, it's like who we are and the work we do really matters. And even if this is a really hard time for us, yeah, there's something about, just like being in community with people to kind of remind yourself of of why you're here and why you love what you do, even if you're kind of in an in-between time from doing that professionally.
Oh, totally.
And remembering that even while companies, so many companies are, cutting their capacity, because that's what layoffs are. They're cutting their capacity. They can't deliver at the same level. They're
Hmm.
creating market gaps that smaller companies
Hmm.
with less aggressive revenue goals can move into and potentially scale up and move into those spaces. So sometimes it's looking, I think, also at some of the targets that maybe we wouldn't normally look at.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
Well, I think too, like just being able to look around and to realize that this is the broader picture that this is affecting a whole lot of people right now, gives you a better perspective on it as well. Hearing that it took you a year to get a role, I've been waiting 4 months, which feels like forever, but then you were waiting that long and you turned around and found a great role, it sounds like, and so I feel like
Hmm.
going out there and hearing other people's stories and also hearing other people's struggles, both their struggles and their successes. It's inspiring on both ends. It either gives me a feeling of community and like I'm not alone in this, or like there's possibility and there's ways out of this too. So
Yeah, and I think that there's a definite sense among those of us, who got through and got positions to help others through this as much as we possibly can. Because it's like if other people, pulled us out of the river, then it's on us to help save who we can too.
it's very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this has been a fantastic conversation. Is there any closing advice you would have for anyone who's still looking for work?
I would just say as much as you're able, and I think when you're, just applying for jobs kind of day in and day out, staying in that community work in a volunteer capacity is a great way to kind of keep your skills up, but also kind of keep your faith in your faith in yourself up, and then keep those networks going. And so it's just, and so it's nice. It's like, even if, you're being paid in warm, fuzzy feelings at that point, it's a really good way to kind of make those opportunities to be doing it for, money and benefits again, which help for things like paying rent. Because alas, my apartment complex does not take warm, fuzzy feelings as payment.
Darn.
So yeah, so I would say definitely it's like it can be really tempting to want to just kind of pull back from that because it just kind of hurts. But I think that you find that it ends up bringing you a lot more joy than you think, and then it can get you out of this kind of dark pit period. So that would be what my advice. What my advice is.
Great, thanks. Excellent. Monica, thank you so much for joining us on the board. We really appreciate you.
Of course. Jason, great to talk to you again. And Michael, great to meet you.
Yeah, it's been really nice chatting and nice to meet you.